Welcome back. We start off this segment in Tanzania, where the President John Magufuli has ordered the central bank to tighten controls on the movement of hard currency and take swift action against failing banks in a bid to tackle financial crimes and protect the local shilling currency. The move comes as the International Monetary Fund called on Tanzania to speed up reforms and spend more to prevent a slowdown in one of the world's fastest growing economies. Magufuli pledged to reform an economy hobbled by red tape and corruption and begin a program to develop public infrastructure after he was elected in 2015. And Namibia's economy plunged deeper into recession in the third quarter as declines in the construction and trade sectors eclipsed growth in manufacturing and mining. The economy shrank by 1.9% in the third quarter after a revised contraction of 0.7% in the second quarter. The economy had shrunk by 2.1% in the first quarter. The Statistics Office says this is the third consecutive quarter of construction in 2017. The poor performance is mainly attributed to construction, wholesale and retail trade, utility, that is water and electricity, and fishing sectors that recorded a contraction in real value. And as widely expected, the U.S. Federal Reserve hiked its interest rates for a third time this year on Wednesday. The U.S. Central Bank delivered its much-anticipated rate decision with a word of caution over low inflation, which is expected to remain below the Fed's target for another year. Policymakers were therefore seen to have little reason to accelerate the pace of rate increases, although the Fed signaled it would implement 3 further rate increases in 2018. But what does this rate hike by the U.S. Fed mean for us in Nigeria? Let's talk to Bolanle Olutosin, one of the research analysts at Financial Derivatives Company. Bolanle, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
The Fed increased interest rates in its final meeting to 1.5%. What does that mean for Nigeria?
So yes, the federal funds rate has increased to about 1.5%, and it didn't actually come as a surprise to us. But like you mentioned, the Fed had eased the rate earlier this year. There's going to be 3 rate hikes. It had 2 earlier before, this December. So we already knew that there was going to be a rate hike. Given that the economic conditions in the U.S. are also favorable, GDP growth is about 3.3%. However, inflation is about 2.2%, which is above their target. So this rate hike is not, it doesn't come from the surprise. Although the margin of rate hike wasn't as significant as we expected it to be. On the impact in Nigeria, we do expect that once there's a rate hike in the US, we see those towards that direction. And at this point, we're still expecting a sort of stable environment. Once the US increases rates, funds would expect it to keep Nigerians going to the US. Although,
Well, Bolanle Olutosin, research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, we're sincerely sorry we can continue with that. The network doesn't seem to be friendly today. We move on now. Libya's political and economic turmoil has been driving foreign workers away since 2014, leaving the country's fishermen to fend for themselves. Reports say it costs prospective employers a lot more these days to obtain residence permit for foreign staff, and that makes it difficult for them to hire foreigners.
An exodus of foreign workers has led to a decline in Libya's production of fish as the country grapples with political and economic turmoil. The fishing industry was once heavily reliant on foreign workers employed by Libyan fishermen to secure their catch quotas. But foreign workers have been steadily leaving the country after the revolution ousted Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. A civil war that broke out in 2014 and a battle with Islamic State in 2016 have added to the exodus. Declining production, along with a number of other factors, have led to an increase in the price of fish.
The reason behind the increase in prices of fish in Libya is that there's a decrease in foreign labor. Libyan fishermen employ labor from other countries. but there are increasing costs. It used to cost $3,000 to $4,000 to apply for residence permit, but now when they bring in labor and finish the process for residency, the cost reaches up to $20,000, which is inefficient. The other reason is that the worker cannot even convert the currency in foreign exchange and will have to go through the black market. It's not worth it working in Libya.
A fishing trip can last up to 3 days, and costs have risen because of an increase in price of fuel and equipment, in part due to the fall in the value of the dinar. Inflation in the country is already high, hovering around 30% and making it difficult for many to afford fish.
This is natural. People like to eat fish. But because of the increase in prices and decrease in cash flow, people cannot afford it. One may eat fish once a week or every 10 days, but for 2 or 3 times a week, one cannot afford it.
Libya's fishing sector employs nearly 15,000 people. The country has a long Mediterranean coastline which measures approximately 1,800 kilometers.
And finally, back here in Nigeria, the government is the 94th nation to join the country-by-country reporting standards, a global body seeking transparency in tax records of member nations. This development, which took place in 2016, is in line with the government's efforts to increase the tax-to-GDP ratio from 6%. At a meeting on Wednesday, a partner on tax and regulatory services at Deloitte and Touche, Taiwo Okunade, explains the relevance of the membership to Nigeria's exchange of information for taxation.
The exchange of information is not a new thing. It has always been, a common phenomenon. The only issue is that it has never been automatic. If you look at the Nigerian double tax treaty, if you look at the Article 26 of Nigerian, the standard Nigerian tax treaty, the model treaty, you will see it under Article 26, what is called exchange of information. So it has always been, in our rule that information can be exchanged with other countries, especially when we have bilateral agreements with those countries. Now, information can be exchanged in 3 ways, in 3 forms. It can be based on request, which is what you see in a lot of bilateral agreements. Government of one jurisdiction can request the government of another jurisdiction to give them information about a particular taxpayer. It may be individual or corporations. Now, the content or the scope of the kind of information that will be required will have to be stated in the request that is going to be made to the government of the other jurisdictions. That is what is called exchange of information on request. Then we also have what is called spontaneous exchange of information. This is not based on request. Governments of any jurisdiction can decide that they want to share information about a taxpayer that is sourcing income in their jurisdiction with the government of the country where that taxpayer is resident. This would be information that is detected through an audit or through an investigation. And it's only when the government of the country of source is able to determine that that information will be relevant for the purpose of generating additional income for the country of residence of such individual or such taxpayer. Now, where we are moving to is what is called automatic exchange of information. This is completely different. It's not spontaneous. It is not based on request. It has certain advantages that the 2 other forms of exchange of information do not have. Under automatic exchange of information, information is exchanged automatically. Government of one jurisdiction collates information that are relevant, information about taxpayers, which they can share periodically with government of another jurisdiction.
And that's all for today's edition of the program. Thank you very much for being part of it. I'm Chimeze Obi. You're welcome.